If you want the latest news about the crash into northern Kentucky by ice, some people are saying it's the Gestapo. You can read on a blog by Mike Brown, Cincinnatians for the American Dream, C4AD. He's talked to attorneys over there and everything. He has the latest. He says 50 people have been picked up. It's the worst thing I've ever known about in my own area.
Okay, we need to move on. We're going to have a speaker. And our speaker today is David Pepper.
Here's David.
5 generations of Cincinnati. He's been on city council. He's been on the what do you call it? County commission, and run for all kinds of offices. But he's head of the Democratic Party for all of the state of Ohio. So, folks, we need to make this guy accountable. And he can't do it alone, so he needs us. So, okay. Oh, he has 2 children. Jacob is got to be going on 2 years old, and Charlie is 1 year old. So he has a future for this country, too. Just want you to know. And he's written a book, The People's House, an Ohio-based political thriller. Somebody said it's good. Very good. Okay, so come on up here. I want to tell you how to use this mic because this mic is really fuzzy. You have to hold it real close, and you have to hold it like at 90 degrees.
Okay, is that working? Well, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on your 50th meeting today. To have your 50th meeting and you're only a year old, that's very impressive. And it's exactly what we need to keep doing so we can turn Ohio blue 1 year from now, which we're going to do, correct? With energy of people like this in this room, we can get that done. So yeah, you mentioned I wrote a book. I wrote this crazy novel, and it came out like last June in 16, and it was this unbelievable plot that I dreamt up. I worked in Russia in the early 90s, and I hate gerrymandering, so it was all about gerrymandering in Russia, and the plot at the end was that a Russian oligarch would try and steal an American election by rigging voting machines. And I wrote it a year and a half ago, and my first effort at fiction failed because it came true. There's actually even a congressman who actually is a horrible harasser too, so that part has now come true. So my sequel's coming out in February, so if you want to know what's going to happen next year in real life, I suggest you buy the book. So let me just say, it's great to be here, and I come here knowing we have a lot of work to do. As you said, hold the party, hold all of us accountable for next year, but I also come very optimistic that we really can change the world next year, starting right here in Ohio. And we can do that based upon the same things that we've seen in Virginia, the same factors and energy we've seen in Alabama, the same we've seen in special elections. There is no reason why that should not happen right here in Ohio over the next year. We are working very hard to make that happen. I'm going to talk for a little bit, then we'd love to open up to questions about any and all topics you're interested in. But what are the keys to success right now? Well, let me just first, before I start with that, so I basically, every single day I get up at about 6 in the morning and I drive to Columbus. I work out of Columbus. And as my son now, one is 3.5 years old and the other is 1 year old. And I was a little late today because my 1 year old was sick yesterday, so I was the one who took Jack to and from school. I picked him up, believe it or not, at 11:30, took him home, and still got here with enough time to speak. But what motivates me every single day to do this job is the worry that if we aren't careful, when Jack turns 10 and Charlie turns 8, Donald Trump will still be president. Think about that. Think about the people who are now 12. turning 20. And all they've known their whole life where they were paying attention is what they're seeing right now. Or think about, as I said, my little two sons, and if they were 10, the world they will be inheriting in every single way, from policy to this culture right now we're seeing of hatred and division. You know, for all the flaws our country's had over its history, they will inherit a country that is so different from the one we all grew up believing in. And every single day, the reason I work so hard, and I'm sure the reason you're all here, is knowing that if we do our job very well, in 18, we can play a major role in stopping that from happening. We can play a major role in ending what is happening right now. And I'll say it this way before I talk about what we're doing, then opening it up. So it's sort of what happened in Alabama, but Roy Moore was such a uniquely horrific candidate that in a way that Alabama, I think, would have been hard to achieve without that, although I think we would have been closer no matter what. But let me just say it this way. 2018, I expect that Michigan will be blue in 2018. Right? I mean, we bet if Michigan's not blue in 18, we got problems. I expect Pennsylvania to be blue, and so do most people. But you know what people aren't sure about? Where is Ohio? After what happened in 16, where it was an 8-point Trump win, Ohio is the state that, although we think Michigan will be blue and Pennsylvania will be blue, Ohio is the state that people, including in Ohio, are like, well, what are we going to be? And that's a moment for all of us to take stock in what kind of state we are and who we are as Democrats and can we win, because I believe that in that question is actually a huge opportunity. If we can show that Ohio is blue next November, that the place that Trump won by more than we wished he had, if we turn blue next November, Michigan better be blue, Virginia better be blue, but if Ohio becomes blue, that sends a signal way beyond Ohio about the status of Donald Trump politics in this country. If Ohio is blue next year, folks, the world, I hope, takes note. Because right now, and you all know this, especially if you have friends in other countries, the world is wondering, what's this country, is this country with Trump? Or is this country what it used to be, where it stood for something much bigger and better than Trump? They don't know right now. If Ohio's blue next year, they know. I joke about it, but I'm serious when I say it. If Ohio's blue next year, maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg decides to stick around with the court for a couple more years. Right? And we need that. The idea, if Donald Trump is president when my two sons are 10 and 8, that means he will have had 3 or 4 Supreme Court justice choices. Which means in our lifetimes, most of us, including me, we will never see a balanced court again. It will be that long. It will mean, if my sons are 8 and 10, and Donald Trump is still president, it means we will have 8 years of Scott Pruitt destroying the EPA, doing incalculable damage that we may never recover from, to the need to take on climate change. But if Ohio's blue next year, I think a lot of that starts to change. I think it's a signal that even in a state where Donald Trump did better than we wish he had, if this state is rejecting him, then I think all of a sudden the dominoes start to fall as we head into 20. And that's why every single day we work so hard. 18 is this historic opportunity at this uniquely troubling moment for Ohio to not play the role we're used to play, which is this swing state role, but to actually play the role of, we, this red state 16, have had enough of Donald Trump, and by being blue in 18, we actually send a signal as the state everyone watches that the Donald Trump era is going to end very, very quickly. And that's our goal. I will say there's the other opportunity, though, in Ohio, and I meant, how many of you are in the League of Women Voters? How many of you have signed the petition on gerrymandering? If you haven't, please do. I assume this group had. In addition to this historic moment of 18 where we get to turn the tide on this horrible Trump era, the truth is, every other thing I believe that we all care about, and the reason you're here 50 times in the year care about, is on the ballot in 18. This state is going in, and this is a part, this will sound pretty negative, but And by the way, I applaud John Kasich when he speaks out against Donald Trump. Good for him. I applaud any Republican who does that, and let's applaud him for doing that. I think that's good. I'm glad he does that. But the truth is, as governor, we've seen much too much trickle-down economics out of Columbus. And so as much as I like what he's saying nationally, speaking out against Trump, this state has endured 7 years of, and actually more, but 7 years of trickle-down economics, paid for by taxes that are regressive, raised sales tax for income tax breaks at the top, and schools and counties and agencies and cities have all been paying the bill of 7 years of typical Republican trickle-down economics, and the truth is it's not working at all. You take this state and you measure almost anything that is worth measuring about the state of Ohio, and I will show you that we are failing. We are now 47th in the country in our high unemployment rate, tied with West Virginia. We are in our 59th consecutive month. Every single month, there's an average job growth in this country per state, and for 59 straight months, we've trailed that number. A lot of that is because, except for a few cities in Ohio, most of this state, partly because their money has been taken by Columbus to pay for trickle-down economics, most communities in the state, and I go all over the state every day, it's like the recession never ended. Now there's an Obama recovery, thank you Obama, all around the country, but too little of Ohio's felt it, because the moment the recovery happened, this state started grabbing money at the local level to give out tax cuts at the top, and those local governments have had to make up for that by wage freezes and layoffs at the local level and furloughs and you know, flat wages as far as you can see. So that's why we're 59 straight months trailing the national recovery. It's been imposed by trickle-down economics right here in Ohio. Our school system was ranked 5th in the nation in 2010. Our public education system. Thanks to defunding to pay for those tax cuts, and thanks to this for-profit charter school scam, which is the biggest scandal in the history of Ohio when you look at the numbers. Our public education system, only 7 years after being ranked 5th, is 22nd and falling rapidly. We are hemorrhaging when it comes to our schools. We lead the nation in the opioid crisis. We're number 1 with overdose deaths. Why is that? Because the front lines of a crisis like that, which is a health crisis, is the prevention that you would hope to see in well-funded schools. It's the treatment you would hope to see in well-funded agencies, in counties, that's where the treatment happens. It's the first response you would hope to see from cities who do police and fire. Guess what? All those groups' budgets were cut for 7 years to pay for trickle-down economics. So we have this crisis of an opioid overdose crisis, but all the people who are supposed to respond have had their hands tied behind their back for 7 years. So we lead the nation, and we don't know why. Our young people in this state have more debt on their backs from student loans than any state in the country. We're not number 10, we're not number 20, we're number 1. So when, again, I praise John Kasich on some of these things, but when I hear people talk about things like the Ohio miracle, there are very few places in this state where you wouldn't mention those words and not get some laughter, because most parts of the state are struggling. And it's not because Obama didn't do a good job with the national recovery, it's because the policies of Ohio, just like Kansas, have been trickled down for 7 years, and guess what? As we're going to learn again, trickle down never works. And this state is paying a price. So 18 is not only the chance to stand up to Donald Trump, re-elect Sherrod Brown, obviously, but it's also the chance to change the direction of a state that badly needs to change the direction. And that's what, obviously, what the governor's race will be all about. How do we get out from under a broken set of policies and start getting the state in a better direction? And at the same time, up and down the ticket, we have wonderful people running for treasurer, attorney general, auditor, secretary of state, to protect voting rights. 2 of those positions are on the apportionment board. So in one moment, we have a chance to stand up to Donald Trump, re-elect Sherrod Brown, win some House seats down ballot, Janet Everhart is here, I saw that. Win the apportionment board. So basically, and get this legal women voters petition on the ballot and end gerrymandering at both the state, house, and congressional level. That is literally all on the ballot in 18. So if we simply do what happened in Virginia and Alabama, not all that was on the ballot in those states. If we simply repeat in 1 year what they did, we have a historic moment for both national and state for our state. One other thing I'd say, and I'll close with this. We've been in exactly this moment before. And this is, in December of '81, some of you might have been active Democrats back then, young ones. Most of you would have been teenagers or younger. You would have been worried sick about the 1982 election. Because you would have thought, my God, Reagan just won by 11 points. He won Ohio by more than Trump did. And Republicans were in every office, like now, and you had a contested primary for governor taking place where no one knew who was going to win. It was some guy named Dick Celeste was running, some guy named Springer was running, some guy named Brown was running. No one knew who was going to win, but all we knew was Reagan had just won by 11. And then we had this really liberal senator running for re-election. Oh my gosh, how's Howard Metzenbaum ever going to get re-elected when Reagan just wanted to stay by 11? And you know what happens in Ohio, in the past at least? Democrats seem to get more fired up after we lose than when we're in office. Hence, your group seemed to start right around the time of last year's election. And independents in Ohio, bad habit by the way, but let's take advantage of it next year. Independents in Ohio like a little balance. So in 1982, Democrats got fired up. Independents thought Reagan was overreaching. Dick Celeste won the primary, and then he went on to win the governor's race by 21 points in 1982. And Howard Metzenbaum got reelected by 15 points. And that pattern is what is repeated again and again. In 1968, Nixon won Ohio. In 1970, Jack Gilligan was elected governor of Ohio from Cincinnati. And obviously, Bush got reelected in 2004. Ted Strickland went on to win in 2006. So we have this pattern of bouncing back. So my point is, if we can do that again with everything on the ballot in 2018, we can have one huge year. And so what the party is doing is to make sure we set ourselves up for that. I won't go through all the details, but I'll answer it through questions. You know, our most fundamental belief as a party is sometimes nationally we get this central role and we judge ourselves on how we perform in a national election, and we should do that. But the truth is, there's so much in a national election we don't control. What we need to really focus on, to me, the heart of a strong party is what are you doing every single year to build a bench of great public servants? That is how you really build a party. So rather than just focusing on the national famous stuff, to us there's no such thing as a quote off-year election. Every year counts. There's a city election, there's a school election. You name it, every year counts. And every single year our goal is to find great people, not just young people, although we love when they run, people of all ages who want to be public servants, not hacks. I don't want hacks. I want public servants and we help them get into offices so they can make a difference. And we do that every single year. We were thrilled when Avtab Purval won. He's such a case study of what we're trying to build, a race that no one thought he could win, a race that we hadn't run in a century. We worked very hard all across the state to train people like Avtab. We did it in 15, we did it in 16. And 1 month ago, all over Ohio, this is where I'm so optimistic going next year, we won races not just in blue areas, we won races in Warren County, we won races in red Ohio. You know, 3 years, we call this our Main Street program. Get people to run for local office, train them, help them get there. 3 years ago, Wilmington, Ohio, there wasn't one Democrat on the city council. We helped a 26-year-old woman named Kelsey Swindler through our local bench building effort, our Main Street program. We helped her win a race. She was the top vote getter in Wilmington, Ohio in 2015. On an all-Republican council. Well, after she won, the Clinton County Democrats were like, hey, that's kind of exciting. And all her volunteers stayed involved. And all of a sudden, she, working by herself on that council, this year convinced 2 other people to run also. So our Main Street program in Wilmington now had 3 Democratic candidates. I met with them the Friday before the election. I had breakfast with them at the General Denver Hotel in Wilmington. Go there, it's a nice place. All 3, and by the way, they're all 32 or younger. 3 days later, all 3 of them won on the Wilmington City Council. Now we have 3 out of 7 of those candidates. That happened all over Ohio. We won seats in Fremont, Ohio. We won seats, again, in Warren County. We won a bunch of seats all over the state in red areas and purple areas. We had people like Kelsey Swindler that we thought of, that we recruited, that we trained, that we encouraged, that we did get out the vote phone calls for. And all of a sudden, if you go around the state, you will see Democrats in places where you're not used to seeing Democrats. And that's really important for a couple reasons. One is, when people say build a bench, they often say, well, it's because they'll run for something else someday. And that's obviously something you want to happen. But actually, it's far more important that they may run for some other office. Because as having been a city council member, actually having a great city council member in Wilmington is important in and of itself. Even if they never run for anything else, I don't care. Do a good job in that office. Because the second thing it does is it changes the brand of the party. In Wilmington, Ohio, those 3 young people, much more than what Sean Hannity says on Fox News, they will define what Democrats look like in Wilmington, Ohio. No longer will it just be some stereotype that they see on TV. They'll think, well, Kelsey Swindler was our top vote getter. She's doing a great job. She's not some stereotype we hear on Fox News. And that's happening all over the state. So to win these local offices is not just because they may run for something else, it's because they redefine our party brand by doing great work at the local level. So the heart of a good party is always building a bench, and we have worked very hard on that. The other 2 things that we have to do, one, we have to, Alabama was a perfect example. Ground game, every year, all the time, reaching out, get the vote out, make sure we're focused on our base. The most loyal part of our party are African American women. And we cannot forget that. And sometimes that's get forgotten. And if all you do is knock on doors in mid-October, and that's the first time people have heard from you, it doesn't seem like you're that important. And so we have to build a ground game that is on early and all through the year, and that was not done as well as it needs to be done in important moments. And then we also, to really think through, the party has not done nearly as good a job as Republicans about identifying why we're Democrats in the first place. What's our core message? What's our brand? What do people think when they hear about Democrats? And if all they think is that we're against Donald Trump, that's not enough. That's not good enough. It's something, because he's so negative. But long term, even if we won on that one cycle, that would not actually be a success long term. People need to know what we're for, what we're fighting for, and so we're working hard on that. So as we see these great candidates come forward, as we see a lot of the energy, know that in the backdrop you have a party working very hard to build a bench every single year, not just when people are paying attention, but even when they're not, especially the national people. We have to build we're the ones in the next year, when Sherrod Brown, all these other candidates, most of what they'll be focused on is raising money to run television ads. It's the party working with all of you that will be putting together the on-the-ground organizing, the vote, the knocking on the doors, etc., to get the vote out. And we're also working in a way that we haven't before to really start having much more consistent messaging from state rep all the way to governor about what we're about. So with that, I'll stop talking. I would love to just open up to a great conversation. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. I just want to remind everybody, we'll get to as many people as we can. Don't talk until you get the microphone, and because I have it, I get to go first. That's the rule. So, I want to know what we're doing in those rural areas that hit us so hard this last time.
So that's a great question, to put it out there how bad 16 was, and to give credit to Barack Obama. Barack Obama got to he won, I think, like 15 counties, but he got to 40% of the vote, and somewhere, I'm forgetting the number now, and somewhere around 45 counties. We have 88 counties in Ohio. So he didn't, most of Ohio was red when he won, but the margin of loss in most of Ohio was within 60-40. And what happened in November of 16 was Hillary Clinton went from, again, Obama I think won 13, she won 8 counties. But she only got to 40% in 13 counties. Meaning in 75 counties, it was at least, 60% for Trump. To put it a different way, the smallest 50 counties in Ohio. Out of the 50 smallest counties, only our great mecca of Athens County is Democrat. The other 50 are all Republican. Obama lost those again by about an average of 60-40. Clinton lost those same 50 counties by 75-25. Obama lost them by about 180,000 net votes. Cuyahoga County alone, Cleveland, is big enough to overcome all those 50. Hillary Clinton's loss in those 50 counties, 75-25, was 400,000 votes. There are not enough Democrats in Ohio to overcome losing the smallest 50 counties by 400,000 votes. So it is an enormous issue that we have to address. That is where this message comes, is so important. And I think the opportunity is Donald Trump promised the world to these rural Ohioans. Now, by the way, some people voted for Donald Trump for some really bad reasons. We're not going to win those people over. You know, if they're excited about walls and bans and you know how he's talking about NFL players, like we do not have a message that's consistent with our principles that's going to win those voters over. But to the extent, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who voted for Obama twice and then Trump, to the extent some of those people, or most of them, were voting because he was promising change in a way that they thought their lives would be improved economically for the same reason they voted for Barack Obama, those are people that we have to win back, and we'll win them back by talking about the kitchen table issues that will affect them every day. And if they're watching, which they are, Trump break every promise by attacking their health care, this tax scam that's happening, you name it, attack. You know, he defunded the Regional Appalachian Commission in the first 2 months of being there. You name it, there are many broken promises, and we have to get back to those people with a clear message on jobs and wages and the future for their kids. And I think we can win them back, but we have to talk to those people. We have to be disciplined on our message. And by the way, one other thing, Janet Everhart might have seen this. The Clinton campaign, and I'm not here. I mean, we've done a deep dive on what happened there, and we were part of it in a way. But most of the biggest decisions were from Brooklyn, and most people in rural Ohio who are Democrats, about August of last year, they weren't sent to go knock on doors in their own county. They were sent to Cincinnati, or Columbus, or Cleveland. And there was, has anyone here read the book Shattered? Shattered is one of the books about the Clinton campaign. There was a decision made that it was too, quote, expensive to try and persuade a lot of these voters to vote for Clinton. So there was a decision that the energy should be focused on, the biggest cities where they're the most Democrats. And so for a whole sort of fall, these Democrats in these counties that we lost 75-25. Basically, they had thousands of Trump signs everywhere they looked. But no Democrat ever knocked on their door to say, hey, vote for Hillary Clinton. The case wasn't even made. And they asked Barack Obama in December of last year, hey, how come the places that you lost 60-40 were lost 75-25? And he said, as he would say, you have to talk to folks. And a lot of these voters literally didn't even hear an argument for a Democrat. And so we have to have a good message, but we also have to have an 88-county strategy where we get to every county in this state, Democrats talking to their neighbors. We may not win those counties, we just can't lose them 75-25. We're working on doing that as we speak.
David, you said when you started you wanted to be negative.
Put it closer to your mouth.
You said you did not want to be negative, and I didn't either, but I have to be. Peter sent out a piece called "The Democratic Party in a Crisis." It was an excellent piece, and I have experienced almost everything in that document, and I know people who have. The party has not been responsive. We've really not talked about the Electoral College and how we're going to beat that. For instance, the lady said, what are we going to do with the rural communities? You did not answer that question. There was no specific approach, tacticals about what we could do. We talked about Electoral College, no specific tacticals about what we're going to do. We talked about the economy. If the Democratic Party wins everything it wants to do right now, we'll be just standing in place. Just standing in place. There is no message, except the Republicans ain't no good. I'm tired of talking about Republicans ain't no good. I want to talk about how good is the Democratic Party. And what is the message that we're giving? And we don't really have a good message, let me just say that. We just really don't. Now, I have sent a document to you and Bert 3 times. It is a strategy to rebuild our country. And in all of the years that I've sent it to you, I have never had a response. Not one. Not a phone call, not a return email. This is the lack. So if you're not going to clear that up, if you're not going to clear up the things that was in that document that he sent, all the talking, it doesn't matter what door we knock on. We have nothing to tell them.
That's right.
So overall, I agree on the lack of a message. I think that was why we lost. I don't know what you sent. I'm happy to give you my email. I don't know what email you used, but I'm happy to look at it. I ran for chair to help fix these problems. I've only been chair for a couple years. I am building this bench. We are working on our message. I ran in 10 and 14 statewide. I ran good campaigns, but because we didn't have some of the strengths you're talking about, I ended up losing against people that I frankly ran better campaigns over. So that, let me finish. So that's why I ran for chair. I didn't run for chair to keep the same thing going that's always gone on. So what did I hear when I ran for chair? We need to build a bench. We never built a bench before. We have spent 3 years building a bench. There are Democrats in office all over the state because of that. I agree on the message. I think it's one of the key reasons we lost last year. We're working to do that. I think the message at the end of the day, which you'll hear from our governor candidates, it's got to all be about economics.
I sent you a piece that talks about fixing millions of people's homes, putting $50,000 in those homes at no cost to those homes.
Bridget is right over here. She'll give you her card.
But this is important. This is important.
I know, but we've got to go get her.
My point is, I would like you really to set up discussions on this. We are not having discussions about something different than what the party is telling us we got to talk about.
Okay.
When the phone call comes, we think we're going to talk, and it is a filibuster, and we don't really get to have a conversation.
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
And so, well,
thank you. No, send Bridget. There's a card. Please send me that. The other thing I will tell you is there is no better year to get issues like the ones you're talking about on the table than a year when people are running for governor. Because this is the moment we have 5 candidates running for governor, an open primary, and this is the year where they will be thinking through their plans for what they will do as governor. And this is when they will be making promises. So if you have good ideas, my suggestion is when you have governor candidates anywhere near Cincinnati, go to them, bring ideas like yours, and this is when they will be laying out the substance of what they will do. And most good public servants, when they do that, they get elected, they fulfill their promises. I do want to say one thing, though. When I agree that we can't just be the anti-Trump party. But right now, I think people see that Democrats are the ones fighting for universal health care. And we're fighting to keep in what we put into place, and the Republicans are trying to take it away. We are the ones clearly fighting to stop this tax scam. As Sherrod Brown has said, and everyone sees it, we're the ones who think if you're going to do some tax change, how about aim it towards the middle class? Maybe have them be the ones that for the first time in a long time see their earnings and wages and have the taxes aimed at them in terms of incentives. I think that's coming across very clearly. If you look closely, everything the Republicans are doing right now is actually very unpopular, and we are starting to, I think, partly through their mistakes, we are starting to see that people are much more likely to vote for Democrats. So it's not perfect. There's a lot of work to do on the message. I agree with that. But I think we're off to a good start right now as we take on what is some really negative things coming out of Washington. I'll look forward to getting an email. Yep.
This is message related also. Are there some things you think we could learn from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who won 6 in a row? Was it 4? Just 4. 4. What about 4?
He would have won some more.
You're right. He's still alive. He could have won 6. But can we learn something from his message and the fact that he also put the country on a trend toward making the middle class the biggest class in the country? First time the human species has been able to do that.
Yes.
So talk about messages, his message.
I think it is the heart of it. I will tell you also, I think right now, and here's some good news, and you all, I hope will agree with this, you may not. I think there are a couple politicians in this country that best represent that message. No one more so than Sherrod Brown. Yeah. And so right now, if you're concerned about message, as we're watching next year, we have someone running for re-election in this state who is more on message about what you just described, fighting for workers, fighting for the middle class, fighting for public education. No one embodies that message, let alone communicates it better than Sherrod Brown. So one of the things I feel very good about next year is at the top of the ticket, when everyone's watching, if they're thinking about their sides based on Sherrod Brown versus Josh Mandel, they're not going to be confused about who's fighting for that FDR type agenda. So obviously we want our governor candidate doing the same thing. We want our down-ticket candidates all aligned in that kind of message. But I think Sherrod Brown is almost the perfect messenger for a group of people right now. By the way, one good thing, there are 17 counties that Sherrod Brown won in 2012 that Trump won. Why is that? Because in some cases where Trump was doing best, it's when he sounded like a Democrat on things like trade. And so people know that Sherrod Brown has been fighting for trade fairness for his entire career. So Sherrod with that kind of message can go right back to places that we lost, and I think win a lot of voters back because he is so clear as you're saying he should be. So I think if he is our model, and he is, I think our other candidates, if they can mirror a lot of his push, I think we all of a sudden are very much on message about economics. I'll say one last thing and go to other questions. All around the state, I hear this all the time. People say to me, well, I don't agree with Sherrod Brown on everything, but man, I know where he stands and I respect it. So he's the kind of guy that Howard Metzombaum was probably similar. He had a lot of different views, but people knew at the end of the day, push comes to shove, Sherrod is fighting for the average Ohioan, the middle class, and they respect that, and I think that's why he's such a great asset to have on the ticket next year.
David, welcome. My question is about the policy of the Ohio Democratic Party.
Put it at your mouth.
Okay. My question is about the policy of the Democratic Party, which endorsed a Democrat for mayor in Cincinnati when 2 Democrats were running. And that, what can I say? It's just, I don't think it's a good policy, and I hope that the Ohio Democratic Party will abandon it in future.
Thank you. Let me talk this. I assumed this would come up. This is a tough issue. Because at many levels, the assumption is that, of course, when you have an incumbent Democrat, if we're going to spend most of our time and money battling Republicans, we're greatly outnumbered by Republicans, the idea that we get ourselves into inter-democratic fights all the time is us taking a lot of money and resources and using it against each other. So if someone were to come along tomorrow and say, hey, I think I'd be a better senator than Sherrod Brown, most people would say, well, Sherrod's our incumbent Democratic senator. Why are we going to have a long primary about that when we need to get Sherrod ready to fight the tens of millions that are going to come from the Koch brothers to try and beat him? I will tell you, as a county commissioner, I raised $1.5 million to knock out Phil Heimlich. First time in 30 years we had a county majority. When I won. I put my entire political life on the line to take on Phil Heimlich. I took a risk. I won. AFTAB did that. Denise Treehouse did that. If 2 years later, by the way, I ended up being county commissioner in the middle of the recession. We had to make some tough decisions. We even had layoffs, wage freezes. If 2.5 years, remember, you were off in the county talking about some of the things you didn't like we were doing. If 2.5 years later, another Democrat said, hey, I think I'd be a better commissioner than Pepper, I'm going to take him out, then all of a sudden, like literally, the incentive to have run in the first place, knowing that my next fight will be against a Democratic contested primary, and my party will stay neutral and say, hey, we're going to stay out of that. Whatever the other Democrat says about our incumbent, we won't even comment on because we're neutral. We would literally spend all of our time helping people win the first race and money, and then staying out. And so I think I see you're not reacting well.
That wasn't the case here. John Cranley did not have a Republican opponent waiting.
No, but the point is, the general policy is if you have at a congressional level, if Joyce Beatty is a sitting congressperson, she will have a Republican opponent. She's a Democratic incumbent. If I said to Joyce Beatty, who's a great congresswoman, hey, hey, some young whippersnapper thinks they're going to beat you, I can't endorse, I would literally lose the relationship between that office holder and the party. So my point is, you may not agree with this, but this is a very complicated topic, because if incumbent office holders feel like the party doesn't stand with them in their next election, you literally cannot build a bench.
The Ohio Democratic Party then needs to investigate John Cranley and all of his dark money contacts. He has called a lot of
Okay, well, let's stick with...
dark money and John Cranley and City Council. It's a big deal.
Making another speech every time.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to answer questions. Okay, next question. Next question.
Yes, I thank you for being
Thanks.
here with us today. I think one of the things that I think about everybody in this room saw it too,
Yeah.
is that in this last election, one of the huge issues is money in politics.
Right.
80% of Americans across the political spectrum agree with this. So my question to you is, wouldn't this be a great central focus for winning the state back? As I think that if Democrats stood up and spoke with one vote from dog catchers to federal offices and said, this is serious business,
Yeah.
folks, we're not going to make progress till we break that power, and then we can put the money and the power back where it belongs.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and be shorter with my answers, thanks to the feedback. Yes, I think that the Citizens United is that and gerrymandering are the two things that are truly poisoning politics. I think gerrymandering actually can be solved next year through this initiative in Ohio, which is the great news. Citizens United is much tougher, but I do believe that we have to speak with one voice. And here's the other thing, with the risk of speaking for too long. Next year, there's incredible examples of money in politics destroying our state. This charter school scandal, it's a pay-to-play scandal. This is about big money flowing into Republican Party and Republican office holders' pockets. That's why they're getting the fat contracts to take money out of your local schools, and that's why no one from Mike DeWine to Auditor David Yost to the Supreme Court of Ohio to the State School Board will do anything about a scandal that is bigger than CoinGate. It's because of money. So not only can we talk about it generally, but I think very specifically we can talk about pay-to-play, the dominant culture of pay-to-play plays in the court in Columbus, how it's ruining our... If you're willing to sell your schools to the highest bidder, what aren't you willing to sell? Because that's what's happened in Ohio.
Yeah.
We have fallen from 5th to 22nd, while a few small business people are now multimillionaires. That's what's happened. So I think we should talk about it generally, but very specifically, and this will come out, I think, in the governor's race, in the auditor's race, in the attorney general's race, because the current office holders have all turned the other way, and if you look at their campaign accounts, you'll know why. David Yost, the current auditor who wants to get promoted to attorney general, had a whistleblower come to him in 2015 from ECOT say, they're cooking the books. They're claiming students that don't exist, and they're making money every time they do so. Within a few months or even weeks of that whistleblower, the head of ECOT gave David Yost a maximum check, or some large amount of money. And within a month or two of that, he basically squashed the investigation into that whistleblower, and it went away. So we have a lot of examples of pay-to-play and money in politics having a real impact on finances, but also school kids. Next question.
Yeah, just a notice, very relevant to this, I put another 20 copies of my summary of dark money, which I think everybody really needs to study. But one of the things that I think was a big plus from Bernie's campaign was the discourse of rights. People accept the idea that healthcare is a right and not something you just have access to. I would love to see the Democratic Party extend that logic, that you have a right to a decent education and you have a right to decent housing. We have 40,000 homeless people in Cincinnati. So I think that discourse is an important thing to stress in the message.
Thank you, I agree with that.
This is about the ground game.
Okay.
On our website for Hamilton County, I cannot find out what ward I'm in, what precinct. There's no map for Cincinnati. And I think if we want a ground game, we have to be able to get in quickly. Also, this group is not on the webpage, which I think is a pretty sad commentary. But I think the organization, at least in the state counties, needs to be very clear.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let me actually, I assume most of you brought your phones here. Let me make sure we've got you in our system at the state party. You're allowed to take out your phones and text for 1 second if you're willing. Text, is it Ohio, Bridget? Text the word to the, so the number is 90975. The number is 90975. Text the word Ohio to that. It's going to ask you for your zip code. And believe it or not, people are more responsive to text messages than anything else right now. And we have a program where we have our staffers text people directly. But if you, again, the number is 90975. Text the word Ohio. We want you in our system, so as we organize things, like last week, hundreds and hundreds of people called the State House to tell them, don't mess with this gerrymandering legislation. Don't try and turn it into something it's not. And they did it because we texted them this. So one, I agree on the organizing overall. We try and work with all of our county parties to make sure they fill these precinct spots. And by next year, our goal will be, and we want to use technology as much as possible, not only to have every precinct filled, but even beyond that, have neighborhood team leaders who get clear instructions about here's what you can do every single week to get out there and lift our voter turnout. So we're working with county parties to do that. And so next year we will have an 88. This goes back to Morris's question about the rural areas. We will have an 88 county ground game. We will want organizers in every county. Fundraising contingent will have paid staff in every county, and they will each be in charge of helping people organize. And whether or not the county party is well organized, we will be directly interfacing with people saying, here are the marching orders to help get the vote out for Sherrod Brown, etc. So by texting that number, you also will be getting into that system and saying, hey, I'm someone interested in being part of that ground game. So again, text OHIO to the number 90975. Thank you.
I'd like to press you a little bit more on this question of the ground game, because you say things now, next year is 2 weeks away. What specifically is the state going to do to support the organizing efforts here? Because in my opinion, they're not very well organized. I wouldn't say a shambles, but there's a lot of work to be done right here in Hamilton County. What specifically will the state do, and by when?
So the challenge of everything is how much capacity does any party have, given that there's not as much money as people would wish there was. So everything is dependent on our ability to, over time, hire enough staff to engage the thousands of people who want to volunteer. We were the first state in the country, believe it or not, to hire. So the next year's ground game, we'll give it a more branded name, but we call it the coordinated campaign. You know, Sherrod Brown, the governor candidate, you know, all the way down ticket, they all are sitting around one table, and then there is a group coordinated field operation. We hired the coordinated plan director about 3 months ago. She is finalizing having a field director. We've interviewed from across the country. We will bring on that field director in the next couple weeks. Early next year. Now you're probably saying, well, we wish that was all in place, and my answer would be, I wish we had the millions of dollars it takes to pay for hundreds of staff for a year. So we have to do, because we're bound by fiscal reality, we have to do a steady build-up next year to ultimately have an 88 county paid effort that we oversee. But we will be hiring a field director, and then early next year, and this is where you guys can be a big help, we will be organizing early next year house parties and other gatherings just like this one, where our field director and our coordinating director will start to go to all the counties, working with elected officials, working groups like this, to get you all signed up to be part of the coordinating. So I will put on their list to call you guys so they can come through here and say, here's the coordinated plan, here's how you can take part, here's the responsibility we hope you'll take in your precinct, etc., etc. So we have to build up beginning, December, January, and over the course of the year, hopefully, again, it's all about when we get to fundraise, we want to have enough staff to be able to do that kind of organizing in all 88 counties. But the first step will be a series of meetings early in the year to get all the volunteers who have just texted, like hopefully you all did, that have been getting signatures for the petition gathering effort. You name it, get them all involved, and ultimately have them all involved in the summer and fall. One thing that's been wonderful to see is all this energy of who's here that's in an indivisible group. The indivisible energy in this state is amazing, and we have built relationships with a lot of the indivisible leaders around this state. The indivisible groups have played a huge role in getting thousands of these signatures for the petition drive on gerrymandering. And so I think a lot of those groups, if we're smart, we will be working in conjunction with them as well. So, but early next year, we will be rolling out across the state to get people signed up.
Got another question here.
One last question, and then Pete, you can ask Peter or David directly if he wants to stay.
My question is, can a woman win the governorship in Ohio? I think a large part of the problem with Hillary was that she was a woman.
Yes, I think, I mean, I hear that. I do not accept that a woman can't win a governor's race in Ohio. I think that, and right now, by the way, I'm proud that we have 3 really strong women running for governor. I think that's wonderful. And I've said, because there are more women running than men, I've always said, may the best woman or man win that primary. And our goal is to have, this goes back to your question, although an incumbent, our default is generally to stick with incumbent, we have an open seat, and our goal has been to make, have this primary be open, transparent. We do a debate every single month. In February, that debate will be in Southwest Ohio, by the way, so we'll make sure you guys all know about it. Our goal has been to have the most sort of high energy, open primary possible, and may the best woman or man win. And by the way, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because it's so important. Any one of the people running for governor will be much better at convincing people they'll change the direction of the state than Mike DeWine will. I can't think of someone who is more sort of status quo, as his Republican primary opponent said, he's like Jeb Bush without the energy. I think that Mike DeWine, I think they cut this deal to have Husted and DeWine together. Husted actually, I think, would have been a formidable general election candidate. Mike DeWine has a lot of name ID, but if you're looking for change in Ohio, and if this state's paying attention to what I just talked about, we need change badly. Promoting Mike DeWine, who's been Attorney General for 7 years, and we have the highest opioid overdose rate in the country, is not going to be change. And so whether it's Betty Sutton or Nan Whaley or Richard Cordray or the others who are Connie Pillich, they all will be able to make a very strong case for change, a strong case for a new economic direction that Mike DeWine will make. I'll say one other thing on the history. And I say this, by the way, I ran against Mike DeWine. I shouldn't say too much since he beat me, but it was the year 2014. It wasn't a very good year to run as a Democrat. But that's Mike DeWine's history. He is very well known. But when you look at his history, he's actually only won in years where he was going to win. Contract with America, 1994. That's when he won his Senate race. He was down by a lot to Joel Hyatt, and then that Democrats just lost everywhere. Mike DeWine won. Mike DeWine won in 2000. Bush got elected here. You were going to win if you were on the Republican ticket in 2000. He won in 10 by half a point. That was a terrible year for Democrats. Mike DeWine won by half a point, and he won in 14. Mike DeWine's been on the ballot with his great name ID 1 year where it wasn't a Republican year. It was a change year. It was 2006, and Sherrod Brown beat it by 12 points. So the point is, I think they have cut a deal and put someone on the top of their ticket who I think people will see is not ready to be governor in 2018, and certainly not to change Ohio.
I had one other comment from back here, and then I'll hand the mic over. The lady back here said, what about the precinct executives? You have not mentioned them, and they are so important.
Yeah. So I hope a lot of you I wrote a letter to every precinct executive in the state last year. We have, it's sort of this structure that we have where the state, we don't have precinct executives, the counties do. But in the end, the state relies on those precinct executives to do the job that's so important. And from our standpoint, it's too inconsistent. Some counties have a great tradition of asking precinct executives to do a lot of heavy lifting. Other counties only ask them to go to a couple meetings a year and nothing else. And so what we're going to try and do this year through the coordinated, is identify every precinct executive and give them a job description of what it means. And our job description is not just going to meetings, it's helping organize their precinct. And if we do that well, I think we can do very well in this election. But it's one of these things where they don't directly report to us, they report to that county, and different counties set different expectations. Let me just close with this, because I haven't talked about it enough. I was met with a woman last week who was in Virginia for the election in Virginia that was such a great success. And she said something to me that I hadn't heard from anybody else yet. She goes, you know what was funny in Virginia? In the city I was in, or the town I was in Virginia, we actually were more passionate about that state rep candidate than we were about Ralph Northam. That's the yard signs we were passing out. That's who we were knocking on doors for. And when we knocked on that door, that's what the person was excited about. It was that local candidate. This goes back to bench building. They were the reason people were excited. And all around the state, it was energy about those local candidates that actually had more people show up that ultimately also elected Ralph Northam. And that's something that people often forget. And so when I'm looking at Janet Everhart, who is working her tail off around her district, and I am pushing to make sure that we have every single congressional district, as badly gerrymandered as they are, filled with candidates. We have some great people looking at these districts, and we're pushing to make sure we have 99 candidates for the State House. I think one of the secrets to next year will be, if you're really paying attention to politics, you're actually more pissed off at Brad Wenstrup than anybody else, aren't you? You're mad at, or Rob Portman too, but he's not on the thing. But who are you really, really upset at besides me? You're really upset at these people who are in gerrymandered districts, who won't even do one town hall meeting, who voted against your health care, voted to screw you on taxes while giving their donors massive breaks. That's who you're mad at. But you're more mad at them than I'd say you are with the current governor. Now, if I inform you about Mike DeWine and ECOT, you should be pretty mad at them. But if you're kind of watching politics, you're really mad at your congressman. And that's why, as much as we talk about these statewide races, it's people getting energized for state rep candidates and for people like Janet Everhart and others running around the state. In many ways, those are the tip of the spear races. And so I commend candidates like Janet. We have congressional candidates all over the state. They're not running in easy districts. They're running in tough gerrymandered districts. But by running and by bringing the passion that you bring, I think you'll be energizing as many voters as we will at the top of the ticket. And your success in generating that excitement will be one key to all of our winning and changing the country next November. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the very open conversation.
David Pepper, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Well done. Good questions. Thank you for your presentation. I have to tell you, I'm going to repeat again, this is our 50th program this year. We have had 50 weeks of programming, and those of you who are paying attention know that we've had good speakers and interesting programs every week. And you may not know the topic, but that's why we have them. I mean, how many people really knew about Keep Cincinnati Beautiful? And we introduced a lot of people to some wonderful things that are going on in our city. Coming up on January 9th, I want to remind you that on January 9th, when we have David Mann coming from Cincinnati, we're going to have a one-year celebration. Bring a treat. I brought the cookies today, but you can bring some cookies on that Tuesday, the 1st, January 9th. We're going to have our one-year celebration. Now remember, we're modeled after the Tucson group, which has been going for 37 years. So there's a ways to go, folks. We've done well for 1 year. We're going to celebrate that, but we've got a ways to go.
Thank you, Alberta, right?
Following that, we're going to have Dr. Janet Everhart. Thank you. Following that, we're going to have a program that you may not know a lot about, but it's with Michael Burrow, Transportation Paying for Itself. He makes buses and transportation pay for itself. So, we need to finish the food. The food, take a container for food, finish the food. We don't want to waste any food. Too many homeless people here in this county. Make sure we get the food distributed. Thank you for coming. You are a wonderful, wonderful group. I'm so proud of you. Thank you.